Okay, let's take a look at some stem plots. Now this is the one that may be a little bit different. I like them because they give you a very good representation of your data, and it's easy to tell a lot of things from them. So when you have a stem plot, you get two different columns in your chart. You get one for the stem and one for the leaf. We're not talking about plants. We are not going to go outside and pick some flowers and glue a stem on one side and then pull off the leaves and glue those on the other side. That's not how this works. A stem plot creates categories for numbers. The stem could be considered a category. And the leaf represents the individual data points. So when I go through my list of grades for my stats class on the last exam, what I want to do is I want to start with the lowest grade in my list. So I'm going to go through and find the lowest one. It looks like a 22. And that's what I'm going to start with. To accurately list my my stem, my category, I'm going to take whatever the leftmost digit is. So what that's going to do is it's going to create a category. We're going to call it 2, but what it really stands for is 20. So now all of my numbers that land in the 20s range are going to go in this category. Now I only have one of those. I have a 22. But instead of listing 22 and any others that might fall in there, I am going to pull off the rightmost digit, the 2. So what this tells me is that in my 20s category, I only have one number, I only have one leaf, and if I put them back together, my number happens to be 22. So now I'm going to go look at my 30, see if I have anybody in the 30s range. For the 30s, I have a 36 and a 33, and I think that's it. So I am going to pull off my stem. My stem is the category my numbers belong in. In this case, it's the 30s. So I am going to put in a 3, and then I'm going to pull off my leaves. I have a 3 and a 6. So I have 2 numbers in my 30s category. If I were to put these back together, I would use 33 and 36. Now I'm going to go to my next category. Let's see if we have any numbers in the 40s. So here's a 45 and another 45. And I think that's all. So I am going to start by telling you that my stem is 4. That's for my 40s category. Remember, the leaves are the rightmost digits. Well, this time, both of them are 5s. So I'm going to list a 5 and then another 5. That tells me I have two 45s in my 40s category. So I did 20s, 30s, 40s. Let's find some 50s. Here's a 58 and a 55 and another 55. My students need to study. Okay, so I'm going to pull off my stem. My stem is the 5. We're working on the 50s category. And I'm going to pull off my leaves. And I'm going to pull them off in numerical order. So I'm going to start with the smallest. I have 2 5s. And then I have an 8. I'm going to go and look for 60s. So I have a 63 and a 67 and a 62 and a 66. Here's another 62 and a 69. So I'm going to pull out my stem, and then I'm going to pull off all of the leaves, but I want to do it in numerical order. If I had a 60 as a data point, I would start with that one and put a 0 as my leaf, but I don't. It looks like my first one is going to be these two 62s. So I need a 2 and a 2. Here's a 3, so it'll go next. I don't have a 64 or a 65. I do have a 66 and a 67 and a 69. I'm going to go look for some 70s. We have a 78, 73, 77, and a 75. So I'm going to start my stem and my leaves. It looks like I need to start with a 3. I think that's my smallest one. So there's my 73. And then 75. So 7 and the 5 makes a 75. 77. So I get 77. And 78. I'm running out of colors here. If I go look in the 80s range, I have an 80 and an 81. So I'm going to make my 8 for the stem. And this is a new one. We have an 80. So that means I need to start with a 0, because 8 and a 0 makes an 80. And then, what was my other one? 81. So I just need 1. Now I have a 99, 94, 95, another 99, and a 95. So I'm going to start with the 9. I didn't have a 90. I have a 94. Whoops, let's put it in purple so I'm consistent. There's my 94. I have two 95s, so I need a 5 and a 5. And then I have two 99s. And that's all of my 90s. And I have one more number. It got added as an afterthought. This 100. And I added it as an afterthought because all of these were 2-digit numbers. I want you to see what a 3-digit number looks like when you put it in a stem plot. the leaf is still the rightmost digit. So our leaf for this 100 is going to be the 0. The stem is the 2 leftmost digits. So if I put the 10 with a 0, I get 100. So that's how that works. If I had a 111 in my list, I would have an 11 and a 1. That's how it works. So if you look at this graph and you turn your head sideways, it almost looks like a bar graph. And that is super handy because it makes it really easy to identify the values that occur more frequently than the others. Makes it really easy to identify frequently occurring values. So if I wanted to look at my list, I could automatically tell that my largest number of scores landed in the 60 range. It makes it easy to find the minimum and maximum numbers. That looks weird. Much better. So to get my minimum value, I go to the first number in my stem plot. It's a 22. So that's my min. If I had a 3 out here, my minimum would still be 22 because my next number would be 23, and 22 is still smaller than 23. My maximum number, the maximum value in my table, is going to be the last number in my table. So it would be 100. If I had, let's say there was a bonus question, and the highest score then would be a combination of the 10 and the 8, so it would be a 108. For example, I don't actually have that score, so I'm going to take it off so you guys don't go back and get confused and wonder where this random 8 came from when it really just came out of my head. If we were to turn this into a bar graph and we wanted to very quickly see how tall our bars would be, it would be really easy to turn this into a bar graph, almost like we did with the pictograph. If we wanted to do it with frequencies, if I keep coloring them, you can sort of tell where the bars would come in. What are the minimum and maximum test grades? Well, we already kind of talked about that. I got a little bit ahead of myself, but that's okay. The minimum was 22 and the max was 100. How many students scored between 50 and 80 inclusive? To answer this one accurately and correctly, we need to make sure we know what inclusive means. Inclusive means 50 and 80 count as part of our scores. If we weren't including them, then we wouldn't use 50 and we wouldn't use 80. We would just use the numbers in the middle. So if I want to know how many land in the 50 range, I am going to go to my 50 stem. I have 3 leaves. So I have 3 in the 50 range. Then I'm going to go to the 60 range. It looks like I have 6 in the 60 range. If I go to the 70s, I have 4. Now I have to be careful because I don't want all of the 80s. I just want to include 80. I only have 1 80. I don't want the 81 because it said between 50 and 80. 80 was my cutoff, inclusive. When I add these together, 3 and 6 is 9, and 4 is 13, and 1 is 14. Did I miscount? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, I did on the older version of this. 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14 students scored between 50 and 80 inclusive. What letter grade occurs most frequently? Well, y'all, this is super easy to find because it's the one that has the most number of leaves. It's this guy. Anything from a 60 to a 69 is a D. So the D's occurred most frequently, and there were 6 D's on the exam. That is it for STEM plots. I am very glad you joined me today. We'll see you in the next video.